today we are going to be talking about the nodes. This is especially basic information for those new to astrology. And Julia's helped me come out of my little box to start chatting about the things that I've learned, but my view is not comprehensive. And so today we're really going to zoom in on the nodes. And I'm going to begin with this little graphic that's right behind me for the new people. So a lot of us are learning about quantum soul readings. And I just put the 5 basic pillars of support. For as we learn how to do readings, only half really is mental. You know, it's a runway. And then the other 50% of readings is you learning how to douse and use your own intuition, whatever way that you can access your higher guidance. The reason that word quantum is there really invites the intuitive higher self to come in, because we're tapping into galactic information and downloads while you also kind of expand into your fuller self. So it's not like, okay, I'm going to learn it and then I'm going to spit it out with my mind. It's a whole being kind of experience. Okay, I'm going to move right now into the focus of today, and that is around the nodes. In our practitioner's course material, you are going to find information on the nodes. And 2 astrologers are key that Julia points to. One I knew very well, Jan Spiller, and I have so many of Jan's books. This is a foundational book called Cosmic Love. You can get it on Amazon. It goes so in depth. Look at how thick this book is. And she has another book called Spiritual Astrology. But today we're talking about this idea of the nodes. Is a fantastic reference. Cosmic Love. Yes?
Is that book different than the Astrology for the Soul, which is completely only about the nodes?
Oh, you know what? You're right. This one is nodal for relationships.
Okay.
And she's got spiritual astrology. She's Googled Jan Spiller.
Yeah.
And she has a site with all her books. And the second astrologer is Karen Black. And Julia, I've never heard of Karen, but I went on her site and it is remarkable and beautiful.
So handy. Mm-hmm.
I love Karen Black.
Yeah. I love her, especially for her Saturn contribution, information about Saturn.
So I'm going to move to the idea that when we print out a report, you'll see the sun line, the moon, the ascendant. Okay, that's where we look to find our most recent lifetime, if there's a conjunction or opposition. But right after that says NN for North Node. That's typically line 4. And then line 5 is SN for South Node. I'm going very basic because sometimes people, I don't know what NN means or SN. The North Node and South Node. So I'd like to give a preliminary, what I think that the nodal axes are sharing, but then ask Julia to please bring in the galactic layer and anything else I may have missed from a foundational aspect. But here's the idea, okay? Got my ruler. So with the nodal axis, you have the center of a zodiacal wheel. And a nodal axis is completely 180 degrees opposite each other. And this is how the beautiful cosmic game works in life, right? As a soul, we agree, hey, you know, I didn't learn that issue in my last life. I'll come in again and try and learn it this life. So there's some pre-agreements. You can find out where you came from in a past life, what those lessons were. And you can also see on the 100% opposite what the lesson is now that will challenge you in this life. Now, you're not going to find nodes in the cosmos. It's not like a planet. It's not physical, but it has a very specific point in space that involves the Earth and the moon. So we're really looking at lunar nodes. Julia, do you want to add anything?
I would like to go straight to the experience I've had with so many QHHT clients when I was doing years of past life regression sessions through QHHT, and we looked at several different past lives of a person And then after their session, I would sit and look at their charts, and especially at the lunar nodes, I would see that it's true what's written in their chart. So for example, a client who would have Aries South Node, they would have had past lives of a warrior or a leader or someone who was very independent, almost to the point of selfishness sometimes, not caring too much about others. It was all about fighting for their own security, well-being, for their own goals and ambitions. And in this life, they were then shown that it's not meant to be that way anymore. They need to start paying attention to how their decisions are affecting other people. So they had to go towards their North Node in Libra, which is all about considering others' feelings and needs, wishes and desires. So that was one of the biggest wow moments, I think, for Pam Gregory, listening to me sharing that, because as she said, so far that was kind of a theory, but now we can, like, I really have seen it so many times with so many sessions. The South North Node, it's a real thing. It really shows our soul's evolutionary journey through many, many incarnations and where we are heading. One thing I want to point out is that sometimes it's not all black and white with South North Node. Sometimes we still need in this life to work with the South Node as much as working with the North Node. Sometimes I've seen it in many client charts that they will have many planets in their South Node, like Anne-Marie, I believe, right? You're here on the call with us. And whenever we looked into that, it just means that their embodiment of South Node in their past lives wasn't over the top, wasn't overdeveloped. They did it in a very healthy way, in a very wise way. So they already, even in this life, they're welcomed to use and embrace and embody the energy and the wisdom of their South Node. But this time also bringing the North Node into it more and just finding a beautiful harmony between the two polar opposites, finding the highest expression of both signs, finding the middle way. So it's not all black and white that you should completely let go of the South and head for the North. Normally, the theme that I see through listening to clients' life stories and challenges and victories, it seems that in our earlier years, we live embodying the South Node energy and not so much the North Node at all. Then it becomes too much and we really run away from it towards the North. Then we start fully focusing on the North Node unconsciously and abandoning the South Node. Once we learn a lot about the North Node embodiment and consciousness and kind of we change towards that, then suddenly we also realize, okay, the South wasn't also bad. And then you really find that healthy middle. Then the South also opens and you're working with both ends. And that's really then the mastery of the polar opposites. That's what I'm seeing really as a natural progression. And again, it's fascinating that we are guided intuitively without knowing our charts, but it's always the way. Yeah.
So that brings up a really good point. If you think about it, there's 12 houses in the zodiacal wheel. So they're really, if each house has a specific partner, there's really only 6 axes that we're working with as a collective, right? So it's looking at, and I think you said this, Julia, before I meet someone or go into a client meeting, you do look at the nodes, because the North Node is like what some people call the true node. This is where the soul is pointing toward. In the Asian cultures, they often call that the head of the dragon. And the South Node, where we come in, the karmic past, that's the tail. But we always have this, head and tail aspect. And I'm going to read something from Cafe Astrology. They said the theory behind the nodes of the moon suggests that we all come into the world with some type of undeveloped or overdeveloped aspect to our character. And so the nodes actually can help you see, what are the lessons from where I came in from. Julia talks about the Achilles heel. Or I think Karen Black also mentions that I used to think, if it's South Node, it's already done, but no, it's the whole axis. And so there's still areas This is an area though where you could say, yeah, maybe I used to be a painter and it's in my South Node of expression in Leo, but there's still something to learn on the other end with how to bring it into groups. So it's a holistic, but there's only 6 partners, right? When you talk about 12 houses and they couple up, but they're always opposite, there's a very specific message. Maybe we can pause there just to ask, is anyone a little bit confused or not sure where we're at this moment? No, are we good?
Me.
Okay.
I'm going to find one chart and bring it up shortly. You keep going.
Okay. So Julie is encouraging me. So it's good to know if you don't know where your North Node is from the report, go ahead and put a little something in the chat. And we want to make sure by the end of today, even if you can stay a little later, I'll stay and work with you to find that for you.
Okay, so when you go to AstroSeek website and get your chart or your client's chart, you will be looking for a sign that looks like a little headset. And you see one facing upwards, literally like a headset where I'm pointing now. And then across it will be one upside down. Or if you look to the right side in AstroSeek, that little headset symbol is right here and it says node here. And then when you click on it, it'll tell you that North Node is in certain sign and certain house, which then also shows you South Node is in the opposite sign and opposite house. So that little symbol is what you need to look for. And you will find that symbol in all astrological wheels like that. You will see it there like this. Does that help?
Yes, thank you, Julie.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
By the end of the day, we don't want to leave anyone behind. So and you're always welcome to email me or, ask Julia too. Or on the Facebook chat room, you can private message me because I'm happy to help make sure everyone understands the nodes. So let's move on. Additionally, with the South Node, you're going to find potentially that Achilles heel that I was talking about. Wherever your South Node is located, there's a potential for great insecurity. If you want to work with a client and find out, well, maybe this is why you're here. So many people are looking for what's my purpose? Why am I here? Where was I? You could just do readings on nodes and their galactic.
Yes, you literally full hour just on nodes and you will give your clients so much. It'll be invaluable. Mm-hmm.
It's that important when you kind of step back and do a broad brush approach, because our tendency in our human nature is to want to get to the nitty gritty. We want to get right in there. What's an Andromedan?
Mm-hmm.
What's the 6-star mean? But pulling back, why is the soul here? So when you look at the nodal axes, so let's play, Julia, the first partnership of house 1. I am Aries Mars. The house is saying, this is how I show up. This is my body. This is my identity. This is me, people. And it is going to pair with the 7th house of Libra. So we've got Aries ruled by Mars and Libra ruled by Venus. And isn't that interesting? That whole Mars, Venus, male, female. Aries, I assert. Venus says, oh, I love, come here, let's get married kind of thing, or let's have this relationship. And I'm talking archetypal energy. I'm not doing male, female. I'm just trying to do the broad metaphor. So 1st house, 7th house. Julia, let's play this game. If someone's North Node is sitting in the 1st house.
Many clients would have that, because people that are drawn to us are empaths, very sensitive, compassionate people who care for others, which means they were too invested in the 7th house, South Node, relationships. And in this life is not letting them to do that again, because it makes them miserable, because they are overgiving and they're forgetting to give themselves. So with North Node in Aries or in 1st house, they need to learn to also love themselves and to decide for themselves based on following their excitement, their passions, their needs, desires, to build their own identity as an individual rather than constantly being a reflection of others or constantly pleasing others. This is a theme that I've seen gazillion times throughout the many years. So whenever you have someone with North Node in Aries, encourage them as much as you can to not feel guilty about saying yes to themselves and saying no to someone who is misusing their goodness and kindness. It's most of all about guilt. You know, they're not used to saying no. And if they do, they feel guilty. So usually they're born into family dynamic where it's quite complex relationships, toxic relationships, and it's their parents who taught them to feel guilty when they're not pleasing them. So you need to really point it out to them and make it crystal clear that this is the theme that they need to transcend and work through. And suddenly they'll be so relieved to hear that, and they'll change very quickly. And their paradigm will shift. They'll let go of those manipulating people in their life, and they'll start finding people that actually love and support them as emerging leaders. It's a really common theme. Does that help?
It does. And you remind me that, you know, when you look with a client, it helps explain, oh, this is why I chose that family, or this is why those experiences happened to me. It almost, you kind of step into owning your own destiny. And I love what you say, Julia. Sometimes there's the childhood, there's the adulthood, and then there's this period of grace where it's our calling out to, you can just sit there and wallow in your victimhood, or are you ready to try and balance and rebalance the whole axial energy? Once you know what the setup was. So, okay, North Node in the first house. What happens though that the North Node is in the seventh? So we'll just do this.
I would have had less of these types of clients, because they would be quite almost, well, not necessarily selfish, but they would have had very strong self-confidence and identity built over several lifetimes. They had the opportunity to be leaders, to be the decision makers, to be the pioneers. So you then need to feel into how much light and love and consideration and compassion they already tapped into. So it's actually not a bad thing. They are, you know, not selfish and egotistical. So mostly people that will be attracted to this type of work, they'll have fair share of the compassion and kindness and caring for others. But when you meet someone that has North Node in the seventh house, teach them or invite them to embrace listening to others' needs, wishes, and desires, to always look for something to learn from the other person, and to find a win-win relationships, win-win situations. The more they do it, the more blessings and amazing things will be happening in their life. And there will be most likely relationships divinely guided or brought into their life for them to grow and expand and co-create with others. That it's now about embracing relationships rather than being even a hermit or being the lone wolf. Some of them would have had past lives as solo travelers, as, you know, seeking adventure. It's not only about being mean to others or being, you know, ego driven. Many of those that would have come to me were like these solo travelers, or a cowboy in the wild west past lives, you know, that kind of thing.
Oh, I love that. Okay, Julia, so then I'm going to ask you about the galactic aspects on the North Node lines. We'll just keep it very simple. We talked about first house, seventh house for North Nodes. And someone sees that, okay, I have my North Node either in the first or seventh, but then how do I read those soul connections? And we'll just talk constellations. Let's say I have, you know, my North Node, first house, but I see that the constellation of Andromeda, that they're engaged in some way. We don't have to focus on what kind of aspect, but how do you read the star families, the constellations that are associated with your North Node and South Node?
Yeah, first thing I want to point out here in regards to fixed stars is that sometimes I see South North Node fixed stars alignments that are not really anywhere else in the chart. Whenever that's the case, it's usually constellations that are connected to either Galactic Federation of Worlds or some of the high councils that we know of, like the Arcturians, Andromedans, and so on. So it seems that that person is here, their soul journey on Earth is overseen by these higher organizations that are helping them to decide when and where they are born, incarnated, and their life journey will play a role in their massive orchestration of everything. So, you know, because sometimes I would say the first natural question is, my journey through past lives into future should be aligned to fixed stars of my soul origin or my true soul family, right? But it's not always the case. Sometimes they will not be aligned to your South North node. So, and mostly when that was the case, it was, you know, then have a think, are the fixed stars and my nodes possibly connected to one of these higher organizations? And you can get the organizations chart in the course, the pendulum charts that I got from Elena's book. So that's one thing I always look at if I look at nodes and fixed stars. And then secondly, if it is the case, the other example where fixed stars in your nodes are also conjunct or opposite or many times throughout your chart aligned to other planets where you know this is your either origin, distant past, or recent past, or just like a strong bond with that constellation, then it's clear that your journey on Earth is here as a result of that nation collectively or in a smaller group becoming involved with Earth. So you're here possibly with as a soul group, you know?
That's so exciting. So you guys, did you see what we did? We laid out this idea of what are the nodes? How do you find it in your report? So we got the basics. And then we started talking more intermediate about, well, how do you read first house, seventh house? And then Julia went galactic, and that's taken us to another level. So if you're hearing this for the first time, don't be afraid. There's just these various levels because we have soul family expert practitioners already to beginners, and it's okay because it's a family. Okay, so we don't want to lose you. Now, Julia, what if someone doesn't have anything in North Node or South Node? How would you typically, just seeing that information, nothing's there as far as constellations or fixed stars?
Great question. It comes up every now and then. And in these cases, it seems that this soul is here for their personal evolution, or their, you know, they really came here to evolve and to go through perhaps first time lower density, but it's their own evolution more so than participating in some divine major orchestration and meeting a council of light before they incarnate. It's more so there's so many solo travelers, and you know there's so many different types of souls, but mainly with these ones I would see that. And then you also see in their consciousness they don't necessarily have this strong feeling that they are here on some major mission, that they're here to do something big. It's more of their own introspection and self-reflection and just dealing with their everyday life. It's a different level of consciousness. There are always exceptions, and there will be other indicators of if it's different throughout their chart, but that's a general statement that I can make about that. It's more about personal evolution.
I love that. It gives you a big deep breath in and exhale, that we're not all here to do multi-dimensional galactic, you know, get your cape and go fight the good fight or learn the big lesson. Sometimes it's just, hey, I just want to go experience Earth. Mm-hmm. Turn on the football and get the popcorn. You know, it's a different, there's room for every kind of experience on Earth school. Mm. So not everyone chooses to go to PhD level.
And it's so important to not compare and feel, you know, because some people would feel really disappointed if they see that and they really wanted to be part of something big. So it's just a matter of perspective, and you then need to reflect on what wound do you have of feeling not good enough. When did you learn that perspective? Because there is another beautiful perspective in your chart that you're not seeing because of the learned pattern of being a victim or not good enough or judged or not accepted, not belonging. You need to work on those wounds if you see it that way.
Right, because everyone comes in with nodal points. So there's still that lesson, like first house, seventh house. Okay, given the time, we're going to move now to the second house as it relates to the eighth house. So, okay, if this wheel is new for you, you can see the second house, we move this way. Right, there's the second house, and it goes around, and remember the direct ruler right across. So second house, Julia, your chart says Taurus with the ruling planet Venus says, I have, I value. It reminds me of a white picket fence, you know, and the bull that says, this is my pasture. So I have and I value. And it is paired with this beautiful opposite of Scorpio. And Scorpio in Julia's chart says, I share, I receive. Scorpio is ruled by the planet Pluto, the god of the underworld. That's the god metaphor, but it's the planet Pluto. So we have something that says, this is mine in Taurus, and I value my relationship. This is my material. This is my car. And this is my money. And then you get over to Scorpio, which is all about transforming, and it's death and rebirth and darker, deeper, mystical, the deep dive. So where Taurus likes to stay and munch the grass, Scorpio is going to try and see what's happening underneath. So I'm going to move it over to Julia about North Node. Let's just start with second house. What happens if your North Node's in the second house?
People that I've met, many with North Node here in second house, they would have had very intense past lives or very intense childhood and teenage years, like extreme cases of all kinds of scenarios, whether alcoholic household, sexual abuse, extreme riches or poverty, just extreme situations of all different kinds, or being in the occult family, or just something intense. It's always very intense past. And they are guided to find a way to detach from everyone's problems and issues and toxicity and find their security in the here and now, in the spiritual essence of their being, and creating their own safe haven wherever they are, just becoming much more stable and not reacting to situations all the time, and rather reflecting first and then responding. That's a huge, huge theme with these people. Okay. And the opposite, if we have North Node in the 8th house, the past lives in QHHT sessions with these clients would have been a farmer, a landlord, taking care of things, and being used to long, strenuous work, or just having this repetitive life, everyday life for many, many years. Just everything was very same. There was no change. They would have, these were like Dolores Cannon would call these digging potatoes lives. Just nothing extraordinary is ever happening. It just seems very boring. And clients, even in that experience, as they were regressing it, they were like, why am I here? What am I being shown here? What's the point? Is this so boring? But they then see how, then they can start embracing the opportunities for many changes in their current life, and they're really heading towards a faster, accelerated evolution of their being through many different situations that tend to be sometimes intense as well. But it's about learning from other people's changes, and from the environment changing, and from just learning through other people's values, and learning to find a different way, and shedding some of their habits that are like iron shirt, when you have habits that you never want to change and they're limiting you. So that's the theme with them. So it's about money, sexual relationships, and oftentimes esoterics, like people who have these nodes, they would usually have either hidden or full-on passion to study occult, astrology, psychology, and many healers would have these nodes as well. They would become passionate about helping people uncover what's hidden in their psyche and help them heal and transform. These tend to be very transformational nodes, especially when it's heading towards the 8th house. And what I just said about the healers, they would usually have several planets in their 8th house, or at least one major one in their 8th house. So.
Okay. So let's say sexual abuse and holding space, 2nd house, 8th house. And then if we look on those North Node in the galactic report, we could potentially, and correct me if I'm wrong, call in that team. Like, okay, I signed up for this. I don't know why. Can I call on those star families galactically? Like, come help me. It's dark.
Yeah, absolutely. There will always be either Arcturians or Syrians, big stars alignments, or Andromedans and Orion, Alnilam, Alnitak, Draco, Tuban, but as conjunct will be there, or sextile trine, helping the person to build their sovereignty. And if it's a case of this being their soul mission, then you will see these prominent fixed stars alignment with their South North nodes or their midheaven as well. And then you will also find many other clues throughout their chart about them becoming a whistleblower or speaking out about this or helping others to do that. Then their Chiron either will have that theme also, so they're meant to become a healer for that wound, or they'll have active Gemini Sagittarius theme that they're really meant to come and talk about it. There will be other indicators of them actually meant to come out and talk about this and help this heal on a collective level. I've met many that had sexual abuse, and I've yet to come across someone who would have done it in the past, and now they're paying for their thing. It's mainly starseeds coming to help to heal it.
Wow. So holding space for even the darkest, most heinous, narrative. There's space and there's help and there's healing. If we look at the axial aspect again and move towards the center. So, I know some of us new to the reports, we go, oh my God, there's Draco Tubin. How do I hold that? Don't worry, put it aside. These are just axial ways of holding narrative as I came in here to learn and to expand. So that said, we're going to move next to the 3rd house. So we're going to do 3rd house with the house of Gemini, ruled by Mercury, pairing up with Sagittarius, the 9th house. Planetary ruler is Jupiter. And our beloved Julia really understands and knows Gemini, Sagittarius. So I'm going to just give you the microphone, beautiful Julia, for if the North Node is in the 3rd house of Gemini, saying, I think, I communicate with, the opposite being Sagittarius, I explore, I teach, I'm the philosopher. So North Node in 3rd house.
That person would have had several lives as a teacher or scribe or someone who was investing all their time to seeking truth, seeking higher wisdom, and usually also building prominent position in their society where they were the ones that people came to for answers. And it's either they stayed centered in their heart and they were helping, or they became too, the wounded masculine, where it's my way or no way, or you will be punished if you don't listen to what I say. I don't know how else to say this. And becoming snobby. They can become, what's the word? What's the expression? Like petty of other people's opinions, and you don't even listen. And it's just, the best, and the answer even before you listen to what the person is actually trying to tell you. So these are some of the karmic themes that need to be worked through and re-experienced, because the soul needs to learn that that's not the way, that's not true wisdom, that is ego. So then they will be challenged in this incarnation. Usually they will have teacher in school who will be like that, opinionated and really, rough
Intolerant.
like that. Exactly. And it will irritate this child so much because that'll be their reflection from previous lifetime. So they're here to learn to become much more graceful in their delivery of their wisdom, and to not put themselves on a high pedestal, but learn to experience the everyday commoner's language as something that is also valuable. They are pushed or forced to learn through everyday humans about everyday life and start valuing that. However hard they will try to teach and become prominent and known and have all the respect, there'll be blocks upon blocks upon blocks. Life will not let them do it until they learn humility. So I've seen that many times. Oh, and one more thing, once they start stepping into their higher wisdom, then they are called to dissect big topics into digestible sizes so that everyday person can learn to understand big wisdom, divine mysteries. They have to find a way to bring it into smaller chunk sizes for others. And that's their path then, being a bridge between divine wisdom and bringing it to everyday human. So it becomes beautiful then. And the other way around, North Node in Sagittarius. These people, when I recall past life regressions from QHHT, they would have been like a socialite, very busy at, like I literally recall some of the past life stories that are coming up here, where the person would be involved with so many different relationships, but always very quite shallow. There was never a depth in the relationships. They would have been born in families that were valuing social status rather than warmth and love and kindness and compassion, or they would have never really had a chance to study, higher wisdom, bigger topics. It was always very kind of lower level consciousness. And also sometimes the karma with North Node in Sagittarius or ninth house is about lies, deceit, changing your perspective depending on what you see the other person wants to hear. So whenever you will do that in this life, like gossiping, it'll always immediately slap you right back in the face, and the person is taught through experience. It burns them so many times that eventually they stop and they learn to speak only when it's kind and true and necessary, right? And then they actually, by the age of 30, 40, they start being guided towards studying higher consciousness material, whether that's astrology or philosophy or whatever else, and then eventually actually start teaching it, usually at the age of 50, 60. So it's also a very interesting path. And many of these would have alignments also with either Pleiades or Orion. So, and if it's especially aligned with South North nodes, then they become the teacher. They start having some prominent spot in whether smaller communities or globally through the internet. They usually it's a path of teacher student, and then working with student teachers as well. What is very strong with these is also they are multitaskers, especially when Gemini is strong. They cannot do just one project or study just one course. They'll study 5 different courses at the same time. They're really very multi-passionate people and quite scattered. And they then, if you see that with your clients, you need to help them realize that they need to become, especially if North Node then is Sagittarius, they need to find one arrow and focus on that, because they will never manifest anything really. The energy is too scattered, not focused. So yeah.
In the United States, we say that's a jack of all trades, but a
That's
master
Gemini.
of none. Master of none. All I can do is give a shout out. Anyone listening, I know our friend and classmate Sylvia put out a little information about how to get a transcription. This recorded chat is chock full. And so I would encourage everyone to go back and re-listen to this, because Julia, you're giving us the gold. And then as I say that, now we're going to move to the 4th house, ruled by Cancer with the moon, planetary ruler moon. This is family. I nurture is the predominant message of the fourth house, and it is equally and opposite paired with Capricorn, ruled by Saturn in the 10th house of I achieve step by step. So one is in the home and the other is out in the world. I'm going to turn it back to you, Julia. What would you say with a North Node in the fourth house?
These past lives in QHHT sessions always were themes of being focused outside of their family home. They were the salesman, tradesman. They were fully focused on building their empire. And they would have shown the progression of how they just had this one goal and they made it, but their family suffered because they never had time for their children, never had time for their spouses, for their friends. So in this life, if you have North Node in fourth house, you may hear the complaint of the client saying, no matter how hard I try to make it in this world and build my success, there are always blocks. I don't know what's going on. I just, it's not happening for me. Why? Well, it will not be allowed until they learn to value interpersonal relationships and the love and kindness exchange with their nearest and dearest. They must value that as important, as their fuel, as their balm for their soul. And suddenly they will start feeling satisfied, because up till then they will, no matter how successful they'll become, it'll never be satisfactory. There'll always be something missing, and it's because they need to discover the beauty of interpersonal relationships and through love and kindness in their homes. So they could have home-based business that works really well with this node. So working from home, and that way they can work with both opposites. Or they were very focused in their masculine way in previous lifetimes and also their childhood, teenage years, early adulthood. They were too masculine, too outgoing, too forceful as well, wanting to control everything. Major theme with these people, and they need to learn to not do that so much. And also they never ask for help. They always do everything themselves to the point of exhaustion, and their bodies will develop all kinds of physical issues. You need to highlight to them they need to learn the feminine ways to also receive. They usually will have issue with one of their hands because there is no flow of giving and receiving. It's just, they need to learn to receive, to nurture, to ask for help, and learn how wonderful it is to let someone take care of them and all that. And then work on their home, building on things. Gardening would be very good for them, things like that. Okay, and when it's the other way around, then past lives of these people, they would usually be very home-based, and their entire identity was wrapped around their family dynamic. So their identity would be a mother and a cook in roles of females. Or if it's men, then also very much involved with their family to the point where they wouldn't know who they are if their children are gone, and they would have identity crisis. And they would have self-confident issues as well. If someone has a North Node in Capricorn or 10th house, they would doubt that if they ever can make it out in the big world like they would see others do. I don't think I can do that, because they never did. They never, in their previous lives, they never built a business for themselves or been an achiever. They were very much in their feminine and nurturing mode. So we need to encourage them to start model maybe people who are more in the masculine, and then find a healthy way. So usually with this node, it's especially when I'm recalling some of the clients, it will be a mother whose children are now mid-teenagers, and she really feels that it's time to do something that is hers, her passion, and something meaningful. But they're literally almost shaking, but can I really do something big out there and for others? And you just need to see that someone believes in them, you believe in them, and encourage them to just take it one step at a time, and eventually they'll become amazing either entrepreneurs, or they really will become successful in whatever their heart was guiding them to. So it's beautiful to see that transformation then. And of course, it had the middle point then embodying beautiful harmony of divine masculine and divine feminine. These are oftentimes star seeds as well, if they have major fixed stars alignments with their nodes. It's about especially maybe Arcturians or Andromedans, or if you douse on them and you see that they came from 6D and higher, then they are really here to help embody divine masculine, divine feminine. They would, if I look now at the starseed clients with this node, they would be born into families usually where sun and moon are opposing. And their father was the wounded masculine, their mother was the wounded feminine, and the starseed's role is to end that cycle and that behavior and start leading by example in embodying divine masculine, divine feminine.
Wow. Yeah, I love how you are weaving together QHHT experiences with astrology, with galactic star nations. You're bringing the full game forward, Julia, so thank you for that. And then with time the way it is, we're going to move quickly now to the 5th house of Leo, ruled by the sun, saying, I create, I express, it's center stage, it's me. And then the equal and opposite is the house 11 of Aquarius, ruled by the planet Uranus, saying, I network, I aspire, I work in groups. So you got Leo going, it's me with my hair. And then you've got Aquarius saying, it's, hey, want to get on the chat room and let's have a group party. I'm going to turn it to you now, Julia. So North Node in the 5th house of Leo.
Here I would see past lives themes of people who were working with groups, either as scientists or researchers or in some organization, always something to do with groups and a collective, and always just one of many was their theme. And sometimes there would be pain of disappointment that they believed in an ideal of a group and it wasn't what they presented it to be. So in this life, they will kind of tend to be always very wary of different collectives and groups and kind of tend to stay away eventually. But also in this life first, in their earlier years and teenage years, they would be quite involved with groups in school or whatever they do after school. That team will be quite strong. And the main thing is that they are one of many and they don't really have their identity developed. Their identity is in their group consciousness. So life is pushing them to explore their own creative ways and find a joy in what they're doing and have that be the main reason for why they do things. Because oftentimes in their past lives, they become very committed to the collective need, very serious about their involvement. There was no joy really and fun. It was very serious. So in this life, they're meant to explore the Leo, the 5th house, and reconnect with their inner child. They were not allowed to do that in many, many past lives, too serious. So if in this life, usually they tend to at first do again something meaningful for the collective, but it's not happening. There are blocks to it because they have to first heal the inner child, connect with the inner child, and be more playful about what they're doing. Then doors start opening and they start manifesting. If it's the other way around, North Node in the 11th house or Aquarius, past lives of either artists, singers, poets, writers, someone who would have been known for their creativity, dancers. Gosh, I get so many flashes of so many different stories from QHHT sessions. It's amazing. And so some of their karma would be becoming too full of their pride and glory and all the love that people, the admiration that they were getting from others. It was such a natural part of their existence that in this life, from early on, from their childhood, they will be looking for it. and they will be throwing tantrums in their early age. You know, why is not everyone clapping? I just made a, I don't know what. So they will be denied the attention from others, no matter what they do, because they need to learn to do it for upliftment of others rather than for their own, you know, ego massaging. So that's very interesting always. And they need to then find more meaningful cause for their creativity. Then they're guided to create something as artists or creators, something that is meaningful. Then they start manifesting success and prosperity when they touch on that shift of perspective. Yeah.
I gotta say, for all the axial pairings that we've come through, that one sounds like the easier one. I'm sorry, but it's like, house 1, house 2, house 3, house 4. Okay, so we're moving right along now to the final pairing on the nodal axes of house 6 in Virgo, who's ruled by Mercury, house 6, and then equally and opposite is the house of Pisces, the 12th house. So you've got Virgo, whose day-to-day routines, health and body, here's my list, I'm going to analyze. And then you've got Pisces, who's just like, oh, I'm going to go away and I'm going to go dream and leave me alone. And I might just hide out for a while, but the dreamer. So I'm going to turn it over to you. This is our last pairing of the nodal axes.
Thank you. From what I recall, North Node in 6th house, past lives of these clients would have been in monastery, in seclusion, in isolation, in nature, just living by themselves and strongly commuting with God, with nature, being very in their, dreamy and very connected to cosmic mind, to just being. They were just being. And they didn't know really how to connect with people, how to fit in, and they didn't like it. They always found it very intense to be with others. I found with starseeds, when we looked at their starseed journey, often when starseeds come to Earth from higher, or often, I came across this many times, when starseeds came to Earth from planets that were heavenly, where there was no polarity, it was really 5D and higher, where it was all bliss, they will have this first life on Earth, or even first couple, as their graceful entry, getting used to earthly energies first, and just having 1 or 2 lives in this Piscean energy, where they were either living in a jungle by themselves or just became this hermit and just feeling the nature, loving the nature, living with nature. And they didn't really have much encounter. Usually then towards the end of their life, someone comes and takes over, and then they're dead, and into next life they start interacting with humans. So that's very interesting. And on the kind of lower frequency of that Piscean South Node past lives, some of them would have been locked up. They would have been in either asylum, is how you pronounce it, or in prison, or labeled as crazy because they had visions. I came across a couple of those too, or known as lunatic, because they were all too in the other dimensions rather than here, and the humans that they were in contact with, they just didn't get it, so they were the outcasts. Okay. Oh, and another one also would be seers and psychics and card readers. They would have channeled for others in a couple of cases. So their mission in this life is to focus more on here and now, on the practical, everyday things that need to get done in order to manifest a healthy life. And in order to be part of a society, they need to learn the nitty-gritty and paying attention to detail. They really need to develop that. Without it, they will not be able to manifest anything proper and tangible in their life. So then they would usually also meet people that will reflect that to them, that they can learn from. They'll usually be born to close to someone or live with someone who has strong Virgo. So they're learning from them. It's very interesting to see. Okay, and so if the North Node is in Pisces, South Node in Virgo, often I would see these as doctors, nurses, or someone who is excellent at details and making major decisions that are life and death decisions. Like they just know what's important and what's not. They have amazing discernment, and they would have been in positions in past lives where it was necessary, where it was required. So, and to the point where they feel like they control. If you think about doctor, like he's in control of it, of what happens. And that person over many lives, because they were so much in that left brain mode, they've forgotten about their spiritual aspect and about divine also, or co-creating with them. So they will try as much as they can control situations, but it will never work out until they will learn to surrender to greater intelligence and co-create with their higher self. Then things will start working. So they are usually through crisis in their life guided to go within, they just need to surrender, either through physical illness or other people's very difficult circumstances that they cannot change and control, literally like the child having cancer or something like that. And that pushes them to surrender, to connect with their heart and soul. And then they learn to have a much more balanced way of focusing on details, but also allowing the universe to help them and support them and co-create with them.
Wow. Okay, well, I think if you're okay, I have two little questions for you, Julia. One is about, you mentioned that oftentimes in marriages, you'll see, let's say I'm a Virgo sun, the attraction for a marriage partner on the opposite side of the axis in Pisces. Can you make a quick comment about that?
I've seen this over and over again. It's the South-North nodes in long-term relationships are usually opposing each other. So it's always a good sign for destined relationship where you're meant to learn from each other through opposites and find a middle point. So that's usually a very nice telling sign. And oftentimes the ascendant and descendant will be opposing each other with long-term partners and couples. So that's very interesting. And then with children, so children would tend to have opposing nodes either through zodiac sign or through house with parents. So do you know what I mean? It's like a triangle. It's fascinating to see
Just
that,
helps
that
to
level
bring
of
those
orchestration.
lessons forward, right?
Yes.
These finding specific dance partners to get that lesson for you. It's like you're calling in these dance partners that you've already pre-agreed to. So the last question is, dear Julia, bringing it to now, nodal transits or even reverse nodal transits. I don't want to miss or lose anyone in this question, but it's like, okay, here's my natal nodes and here's the axes. But what happens when the world's nodes, which are currently in Sagittarius, Gemini, what happens when they return to North Node hitting my North Node?
Yeah, well, if it's the opposites, you tend to step back into your South Node, and so you've been working on unconsciously developing your North Node, but now there is a nodal return, and suddenly you can't help it but you step back into your old energy, and all the progress you've made, but you're back reacting in the same old way. It's just universe letting you revisit that old energy, feel into it, and you will actually see how much you actually did shift your consciousness and your way of being. So you just kind of tip there for a little bit, realizing how much you've changed, how it's no longer really what you actually are or who you are, and then you more joyfully choose the higher expression of both your nodes. I would say it for both transits. It really is a time to review what your nodes mean and reflect on your current situations that are presenting themselves. Usually during these transits, situations will present themselves that will actually be very relevant to the archetype of the nodes. So it's quite amazing to see.
Wow. Well, thank you. Thank you. And
There was one great question, if I may here. What if we have fixed stars, only trines and sextiles, fixed stars alignment to nodes? Does it mean that we don't have to work as hard? That was the question. Brilliant question. That's and brilliant perspective. That's how I would translate it. If there are trine sextiles with the nodes, fixed stars, I would say that this person is receiving wonderful, kind of reaping their own karma, most likely from their other incarnations in the other star systems. And they have a lot of positive influence to help them evolve and fulfill their south node, north node path. I would see it as a very, very positive sign. And if there are a lot of squares, then it's the opposite to that. Then there will be relationships from star seeds from those star systems that will be causing a lot of challenges on their path of evolution, or their own aspects from those star systems, some unresolved or lower perspectives that will be hindering them. They need to kind of dive into that and find a higher perspective that feels better. And then, you can always transcend the squares where they no longer are blocks, but gifts. So never be too worried about that. And of course, conjuncts and opposites. It's interesting how sometimes you have south node conjunct your soul family fixed star, and your north node is opposing your soul family fixed star. So what does that mean? Or when it's the other way around. I see these conjunct opposites with lunar nodes as one and the same almost, and you really are heading towards integration of polarity and focusing on the middle point, on a healthy balance between the two.
wow. So I want to give a shout out. So much of what we covered is in the practitioner's course material. If you hit Control F for the find key, you can type in node. But thank you, dear Julia. I know time is we're over time, but thank you, everyone. And so next Wednesday will be the Q&A, and Julia is open to receiving your questions, especially if it's around your nodes. What does it mean? But you got to do some homework on your end. So find the information as best you can in the course material first. So until next time.
Thank you so much, Ursula. You're just such a blessing, such a blessing. Thank you, thank you, thank you, everyone. Much love. Take care.